Hey, it's Kevin DeWitt here. Welcome to another plugin knowledge session. This week we're going to have a look at UAD's version of the Neve 1073. The Neve 1073 is extremely famous. It is based on hardware from the 1970s. It is used in pretty much every major studio in the world. And it is a preamp, so basically we plug our microphones into it and we get line gain and boost. So this is getting it into our recording software, or in those days through the mixing desk onto tape. Okay, it's also got a EQ section there with a filter and a couple of knobs on there to balance out the EQ. So its primary purpose originally with the hardware version was that you would take your microphone in the studio and you would plug it into this Neve 1073 preamp. It would obviously pre-amplify the signal, getting it into a level that would go into your mixing desk. Okay, but you would have somebody playing the source or singing through the microphone, whatever else. You would adjust your volumes, get it to the right level. You could push it a little bit harder to get a little bit of that Neve distortion into your signal, and you might fine tune a little bit of EQ on the 1073 just to get the sound right that's coming out of the microphone. It would then go through, say, your mixing desk, whatever else, to the tape machine, and you would then record. We now can use that in a emulated form in UAD software. There's probably other versions of this plugin with, say, waves, etc., that sort of thing as well. The big difference with the UAD version is if you have a UAD Apollo, then you can place this plugin in Unison mode. And what that means is that it actually changes your preamps in the UAD Apollo to emulate the Neve 1073. So you're basically pretending that you own a hardware model of a 1073 and that you were using that on your microphone preamps to record your sound. So very great technology for this, and really useful for recording. Other than recording, we can also obviously pull it up in our DAW to use it to add some after distortion or EQ, that sort of thing. Okay, so it can be very useful for that as well. Now, I will open the UAD console to show you what it looks like when you do it in Unison, in case you're interested and you don't have one. But obviously the run-through example in here is going to be pretty much done in the DAW to show you that side, because I'm not recording anything at the moment to show you how it works in recording. So let's go and check it out. Okay, so this is what it looks like in our DAW, but before we do that, let's bring up the UAD console and, whoops, let's bring up our UAD console and show you that here. So this window here that I'm moving around is my UAD Apollo, and you'll see this meter moving as I'm talking because this is where my microphone is plugged in. And what we can do in the UAD is you'll see this slot here that says Unison. Now you'll actually see that here on this channel here, and this is where I've got my guitar Kemper in, right? Because Neve 1073 is very popular for guitar recordings. And you'll see without that there, that would have said Unison Plus. Okay, and you'll see that the input gain here is adjusted like that there. But as soon as we put a 1073 on here, and you can see that it says what channel it's on and it's in Unison. Okay, so we've got exactly the same plugin here that we had in the DAW, but this is now on my preamp, microphone preamp, on the UAD Apollo. So I am recording if I was playing guitar and recording it, I would be recording through this thing here. Now you might notice that my microphone here, if you actually look here, just to show an example, I'm not using a 1073 on my voice. I'm actually using a API Vision. And again, this plugin is also working on Unison. So this is my preamp for my voice. And you get to use all of these extra features that you can do some EQ, which I'm not actually doing. You can boost the gain to add a little bit of grit, that sort of thing. And you can turn on a high pass filter, put a compressor on. So you'll see I've got a little bit of a compressor on here. And it could compress my vocals if I jump up too much in volume. See that there? And you can put gates on, etc., whatever else with that. But with the 1073, we're obviously limited to this functionality here on our Unison model. But it's supposed to change the way the preamp in the UAD Apollo sounds and reacts to your input source. So it's a brilliant concept and it works really well. So let's get out of that and let's get into our DAW where we can apply this as well. Obviously, when we're applying this, this is a little bit different, okay, because we've already recorded our track, okay, so we're not recording through this now. This is now being placed as an after effect. So it's probably not as common to do this as it would be to do it as the Unison plugin in UAD. But it's obviously that is something that can be done. So we have a little preamp section here. We have our gain control. We have our EQ section with a filter. We can adjust the phase. We can turn the EQ on. We can turn the whole plugin on. We can adjust the overall volume of the plugin. We can also adjust this volume within the plugin. So this is emulating what you would do if you were to turn this up a bit on the preamp and sort of push some distortion. Whereas this is an emulated volume. This one here is a clean volume. So this is just basically a plug-in boosting, cutting volume to balance it out, not to emulate the hardware and push some grit through or anything like that. Okay, so the preamp section here would be most beneficial in Unison mode, but it still has an impact even without it. So we have our mic impedance level, so we can have a high impedance or a low impedance. So the low, it states as 300 ohms, and the high is 1.2K. So there's a slight change in coloration when you use this switch here. So it's only supposed to have an impact when we're switched over to mic mode on here and not when we're in line mode. So we'll see if that's the case when we try it out here. We've also got a pad here, so that's pretty common on a preamp here. So, you know, it defaults to 0, but if you've got a very hot signal coming in and it's just way too loud, you can obviously flick it over to -20, which you can see here. I can't actually click on these when it's in line mode, but if we go across to mic, then I can play with these settings. So let's get to our gain here while we're playing with it. So we have two sections. We have a line mode, and when we flick over to line mode here, we're talking about a level for a line signal, you know, which is generally not a microphone. It's, you know, a direct audio source, something like that, which is usually a lot louder than a microphone. And then we have a microphone section. So when we flick over here, and the controls are basically like that. So when you're in mic, you're adjusting between here, -20 and -80, and there's even an off setting here. And then you can click over to line, and again, we're going -20 to off. So depending on which setting we use, because, you know, if we were doing this in the Unison model, we would generally set it over here on mic. if we had a microphone plugged in, and we would adjust the level. Obviously, if we had a line signal, we might switch over here. Now, saying that, you can break the rules and do things a little bit differently to get different sorts of distortion, and we can do that when we're playing with it in here. So as I said before, we've got a phase button. So if we've got a signal that we need to reverse the phase, we can do that here. We have our EQ to turn on. So we have a filter, which is very simple, and it's just lockstep. So you don't get a great choice here. It's just basically 50 Hertz, 80, 160, or 300, or off. We then have our EQ section here. So you'll see by our little picture here, this is a shelf and this is a high shelf. So we can go into the negative range here, which is going to do a cut of a shelf, or we can go positive and do a boost of a shelf. And that high shelf there is sort of indicated in the manual that it's about 12 kilohertz. So very high up in the range, just to add, I guess, a bit of sheen, bit of air to the top of your vocal effect there, or whatever you're recording. Then we've got a mid band here. So we've got two controls. We've got the inside knob and the outside knob. So the outside knob here sets the frequency range. So you'll see that it's again lockstep. You've got an off 0.36, which is going to be 360 hertz, 700 hertz, 1.6K, 3.2, up to 7.2K. So we set our frequency range there, and then the middle knob again is a boost because of the little plus symbol, and a minus symbol there to do a cut. And again, it shows the shape there. It is a parametric or bell shape there. And then we have our low section here, and again, this is a low shelf by the symbol, and we've got the two knobs again. So the outside knob sets our frequency, so we can be off 35 hertz, 60 hertz, 110 hertz, 220 hertz, and then we can boost or cut. So pretty simple. So again, this is not meant to be an overly thorough EQ. Obviously, you can use it for any sort of EQ work, but its primary use was in the recording phase. So it was just to adjust your input signal so that you had it sounding the right way that you wanted to, and adjusting for anything that you didn't like in the microphone, just to give it that perfect sound before you hit the tape and recorded it. And again, we can turn the plugin on and off. And as I said, we've got a clean boost or cut here just to apply for the entire plugin. Or we've got a level control, which is the Neve level control. So we can reduce our signal here, or we can boost it and start to add some sort of clipping distortion effect based on the console here in the Neve 1073. So let's have a bit of a play with it and see what we get on this guitar. So at the moment, I've got an acoustic guitar and it is bypassed. Okay, so when we're in line mode, we can get a bit of a boost going on there, getting a bit more grit, loudness into it. We can adjust that. Now, I'll switch over to mic. I'm just going to turn this pad on because it's very loud at the moment. So you can see there, you can push this a bit and get some of that sort of Neve distortion going on. Now that's obviously a bit excessive, but they're lock steps too. So you don't have as great a control as you'd probably like with some of these controls. It is locked to these little dots. Let's put that to 0 and let's drop our volume using this and just try and get a level balance here with just these settings. You can hear there's a little bit of extra life in there. Let's push it a little bit more. No, that's a bit too distorted for my liking. We're starting to crunch too much. Alright, let's see what pushing the volume on this will do. So we'll push it up. Let's go full all the way. I'll drop this down quickly. So we get a little extra bit of clipping going on with that, but obviously we can't adjust the volume enough with that, but we could drop that down. So totally different sort of sound there. So let's just put that back. Let's get this balance right again. Alright, so let's play with our EQ stuff now. Okay, so we've got an idea of what this is doing. And let's do a bit of a filter. Definitely good for getting rid of that rumble, especially if you're doing this, like I said, in Unison, you're doing recording. I would most likely, especially for a guitar like this, have it set to at least just down on the 50 hertz there, because anything below that is not going to be useful on an acoustic guitar. So good to get rid of that to remove any rumble or air conditioner noise or anything like that that might be in your room. So let's play with the other EQ settings now. So that's definitely brought some nice brightness out of that acoustic guitar. Sounded a little bit MIDI and boxy, previously, and I haven't even done a cut at all on this in that region, but just that boost there with that shelf, and I haven't even gone that far, really brings a nice sound in that acoustic. So just demo that again. Start with bypass. Sounds really great. So you can see if I was recording this and I had it on Unison and I had somebody sitting there playing this guitar and I was hearing it in the before, and then I just pull up this Neve 1073, it's in Unison mode, dialing my thing, and then I'd say, okay, it sounds a little bit dull, a little bit too MIDI, do a bit of a boost on this shelf here, and then it sounds like this, and we basically record it in like that. And then it's less for us to do in the mix, right? Because we've got the guitar sounding pretty much the way we want it to, right at the source, right on the entry into our DAW before we record it. We've got it EQ'd nicely, sounding great, filtered off a little bit of that low end there, got a little bit of extra life by putting a bit of preamp distortion in there and getting that Neve 1073 sound onto your recording that people spend thousands of dollars on to buy the hardware and go to recording studios for. Obviously, you need a UAD system to run this plugin, and if you want to run it in Unison, then you need to have an Apollo or a UAD twin to do that. But I definitely recommend the UAD, especially for this functionality, to be able to actually load these preamps and record through them with your microphones is just fantastic technology. Just can save you thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on buying all of this extra hardware just to record your instrumentation. Okay, so that's the UAD Neve 1073. Check it out if you've got a UAD system. If not, hopefully you've learned something from it anyway of what you can do with it and the advantages of potentially having a UAD system for your recordings and for using this sort of emulated sound of very vintage hardware that people, love to get a hold of. So hopefully this has been helpful. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.